He said, I can predict where the S&P is going to turn every day. And I said, what? I said, how is that even possible? The one thing I said to myself, which I guess sets me apart differently than other people, is I said, look, if I can lose 18 grand in one night, I can make 18 grand in a day. It has to go the other way. I'm going to call you 30 minutes before the open every day for the next 6 months. And I'm going to tell you where they have business to do every day. I knew the software worked. And the really fun part about it is it does the exact same thing on every market, every time frame, every bar style. It doesn't matter what it is.
We're not robots. We're emotional beings. And I would imagine, I know from my own experience, we see traders who just override their rules because their need to be right just seems to override what the data that's right in front of you.
Yeah. Most traders do is they'll come in and they'll do a demo of our software and they'll say, okay, your software's too expensive. We're going to go do some really cheap software that we found on the internet for $29. And, I said, look, when you're down $10,000, just come back to it.
I'm super excited because I just got done interviewing John Novak. John is a 30-year trading veteran. He's the founder of NextGen Software, and now he's the brains behind a brand new prop trading firm that is absolutely shaking up the industry. It's called NextGen ProTrader Funding. He's built a career helping traders master Fibonacci-based setups, and now he's using that same precision to fund traders without the usual gimmicks. If you've blown out other funding accounts with other firms, John has built the firm he wished existed when he started. Listen to this interview with John. I know you'll love it.
So I'm here with John Novak. John is the founder, the creator of NextGen. John, tell us, how did you get into trading?
Well, first, I appreciate you having me on. Really look forward to our talk together. How did you get into trading? That's the good one for everybody. It was 30 years ago. Actually, I was 25 years old. And, interestingly enough, I had known nothing about trading. And I had a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, and I was bartending at Houston's restaurant, Hillstone's, Houston's. A lot of people are very familiar with that. And a buddy of mine who worked with me for a couple of years had left and went to a firm that sold commodities trading software. And it was daily bars, and the system would go in and actually give buy and sell signals. The broker would trade it. The client had nothing to do. And the owner of the firm gave 110% profitability guarantee. I went over there, guarantee. And anyway, short version is he said, you need to come over. And I said, no, I got kids. I got insurance. I'm making 50 grand a year. And he said, here's my check for 2 weeks. And it was like $14,000. And I'm like, okay, I'm off tomorrow. I'll come over there and check it out. And I started selling software, and that's really how I got involved in the trading space. And in selling software, I had a lot of clients who were day traders. And, they had a long-term portfolio and they did the position trading stuff that the system did, but they also day traded S&Ps.
Let me just ask you, you were essentially cold calling people, but you were telling people about this software that had it just kind of told you when to buy and when to sell.
Yeah.
And the client didn't do anything. So it was discretionary funds.
They paid for the strategy. They would set up an account with somebody in Chicago, and the broker would just trade it for them. And anyway, the demise of that one was fun. But anyway, I was just a salesperson. And in meeting these people, I had a client. His name was Jerry Simmons. And he said, I can predict where the S&P is going to turn every day. I said, what? I said, how is that even possible? And he said, using Fibonacci analysis. He said, I can spend a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours in the morning doing this and that, and I can tell you where all the levels are going to be for the day. And I'm like, you either love it or you hate it. And immediately I fell in love with day trading the S&P using Fibonacci analysis. So I said, can you teach me? I mean, that's basically it. And he was my mentor for teaching me Fibonacci, and he taught me. And along the way, the first year I was selling software, I didn't know what I was doing. I only worked there half a year. I made like 75 grand. Second year, I made 160. Third year, I'm now 26 years old. I'm making 250 grand a year selling software, which is pretty good. For not having any experience. But
is it really software? Are you selling discretionary trading account?
Well,
was a client even watching what was going on?
No, but they could run it with supercharts. Was the trading, pre-trade station.
Yeah, they could like early internet, really.
Oh yeah, you had to have a satellite dish, and
yep.
And
you're dating yourself now.
Yeah, well, we all ran out, and what we had done is me and the other 5 sales guys. When we started learning this S&P day trading stuff, we went and got the satellite, put it in the backyard, and whoever was closest to the office, we set it up at their house. So we could take a 2-hour lunch. So we took a 2-hour lunch, and at 12 o'clock, we would go home, we would try and day trade for an hour, and then we'd rush back to work. And that was how I got involved in it. And it was awesome. We'd make $500, go back to work, make more money selling software. And my first lesson in trading, this is back when you had to call down to the floor to get your fills.
Yes.
So I went short at lunch. I was up $1,000, 2 contracts short. And I said, hey, liquidate. I called down there to liquidate, and I thought I had said buy. And they said sell. I had said sell. So now I'm short 4. And this is pre-S&P mini days. So we're talking $500 a point.
Big contract.
And I'm short.
Big contract size.
Yeah, it's like the equivalent of being short 40 E-minis right now. And anyway, they called me and said, look, you're down 18 grand on your position overnight. What do you want to do with it? And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I said, I got out of that. I was up $1,000. And so they actually played the tape of me selling 2 more to me, and that's how I wiped out my first $20,000 account.
Wow!
At lunch, but
I think everybody needs that lesson. Everybody needs that hammer over the head that first time, because human beings,
some people love it.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, look, you either love it or you hate it, and instantly, the one thing I said to myself, which I guess sets me apart differently than other people, is I said, look, if I can lose 18 grand in one night, I can make 18 grand in a day. It has to go the other way, right? So, I was immediately fell in love with trading, and that's how I got started. How I got into the indicator space is a little bit different. We're still working at the firm we were working at, but the end was coming, and you could see it. Volatility had increased. The systems were losing. Clients were getting mad. And apparently
how did the guarantee work if the clients were losing money?
If they took every signal for a year and they didn't make money, he'd give them their money back. Which
plus 10%.
But for the first 3 years I was there, and maybe even years before that, every one of my clients was up a couple 100%.
Oh, okay.
So everybody was making money. Everybody was happy. Story is the guy who ran it, I won't use any names. We executed all the trades through Aileron in Chicago. Larry Stein was the broker back then, and great guy. We had a great relationship. And what would happen is there was a different module of software for each commodity, and now retrospectively, now knowing what I know, is just a over optimized version for a different commodity of the same program. But anyway, neither here nor there. He would say, look, soybeans is hot. Call all your clients and sell the soybean system. So we'd call the clients, and they'd add on $5 grand for the soybeans, and they were making money. And it just kept going and going. And the end came really kind of crazy. Pork belly system was doing well. So he said, hey, Larry, call your clients and tell them to do the pork belly system. He's like, I'm not doing it. And he goes, there's no liquidity for everybody that we have to do pork bellies. We'll, run the market one way or the other. Everybody's going to lose. And he goes, I'm not doing it. And he goes, you will do it, or I'll yank out all of our clients and put them at another broker. Oh. So anyway, Larry was I'm not sure if I get this 100% right. I think he was the nephew of the governor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange at the time. And within about 30 or 60 days, the CFTC came in and sued him for a couple $1 million for whatever, blah, blah. It doesn't matter what. But it was the end of, and I could see it coming, and I was okay with it. I said, look, I know how to day trade the S&Ps, and I've got this Fibonacci stuff. I said, we're going to start a business of teaching people seminars. So I actually left with Jerry Simmons, who was my mentor on the Fibonacci, and we did, I don't know, months and months and months and years or so of weekend 4-day seminars. And during the seminar, we took everything that he taught, which was how to take 4 or 5 time frames of Fibonacci and do all the projections and retracements and all the other good stuff and predict the next day's levels. And, and that was it. I mean, that's what we taught, was how to get the levels. We didn't teach how to trade. We didn't teach where to get in. We didn't teach where to get out. And these 4-day seminars I don't know if you've ever given a seminar, but a seminar sucks the living life out of you, which is fine.
It's very draining. Setting it all up.
I love doing
people.
Them. Yeah, and I love doing them, and I love teaching people, and I love teaching people online in a chat room for a few hours a little bit better than I do the 4-day. And I told Jerry, I said, look, all of this stuff is pretty, exact. I said, why don't we write a software program to do all this work that takes 4 days to learn and, 6 months to master? I said, why don't we just write a software program and we can get in the software business the same way, we were selling software, doing really well. He said, I don't want to have anything to do with it. So I said, well, I'm going to go do it. And he said, knock yourself out. So this is where the idea for NextGen Software Services came from. And I said, we set out to start writing the software. And this is in 1997, just to kind of give a little bit of reference. And I had another client who was a top level chip designer out in California, worked in Silicon Valley, and was head programmer for a bunch of startups. And we had really a great relationship. And I said, if I tell you exactly what I want this thing to do, can you make it happen? He said, if you can say it, I can make it happen. So I said, okay. I said, how long?
That's remarkable considering the era. It's easier today, but 97, finding a good programmer was a much more difficult thing.
So I told him, I said, look, I want to automate Fibonacci and I want to do this. And he didn't know what I was talking about. And he's like, just tell me what you want it to do and we'll make it happen. And I said, look, I'm on a crunch here because I need to start making some money in a few months. How long is it going to take? And he said, 3 or 4 months probably for us to do it. Took 2 years. And I was selling my Stairmaster, selling my wife's jewelry. And, I have to say my wife was very instrumental in the whole business. I mean, she was tech support. She ran a chat room. It was just me and her. And, this is August 4th, 1997. We started.
That's a good woman.
Project.
That's a good woman.
I knew
had your back, man.
Well, I knew it was August 4th, and I can remember it because she's like, her birthday's on the 3rd. And she was like, why the hell didn't you quit your job on my birthday instead of the day after my birthday? So anyway, it's been a long running joke, but short version is it took us 2 years to get software done. And we got our first Fibonacci Confluence box, I guess. And I remember, it's very funny. We drove to Dallas to go see my father. And we told him, we had a little laptop and we said, here's the bars and this is the S&P. And he's like, oh, okay, whatever the hell that means. And I said, do you see how it went up here and hit that big white box and then went the other way? And he's like, yeah. I said, that's the future. He's like, oh, Lord. He goes, how much money do you need for groceries? I'm like, $500. Because we were broke at this time. And, in 1999, we sold our first one. Michael Itkin actually is one of our very, very first clients. Hopefully he's not mad I use his name, but he still uses the software today. So 25, 26 years later, he's still using the software and, doing well. So it's been fun. It's been a fun journey over the years. And, it started off small. It was just me and my wife, and we're selling basically, the majority of the people we sold were the people who did the seminars with us.
Okay.
Because we said, hey, all that work that we taught you how to do, how about if it was automated? And, they loved it. So that built a base. And from there, NextGen Software Services was off to the races. And we've done, 25 years, 27 years since then.
So how does the software work? Does it gives you buy and sell based on the Fibonacci algorithms you've created?
It doesn't give buy and sell signals.
Okay.
So it generates turning points in the market before the day begins. So to give you an idea, most people now are familiar with Fibonacci. They draw a retracement from a high to a low, or maybe even a projection from a low to high and try to project out. What our software does, short version, is it takes the time frame that it's looking at. Let's just say 1 minute time frame. And it does 4 different types of Fibonacci projections. So from the high to low, from the low to high, from the low to the next low, and we call them alternates, retracements, expansions, and projections, is what Jerry had taught me. So there's 4 different ways, and basically every pivot that's in the market deserves a Fibonacci line, and every pivot going back for 10 days, 30 days worth of data, depending on the size of the chart. So what would happen is you'd have 100 lines on your chart. And then we'd go further in the software, and we actually would build 10 or 9 more, so 10 total synthetic timeframes, and do every swing and every pivot and every Fibonacci from there. And you'd end up, I have a picture. Too bad I can't show it, but it's 1 million lines across the chart. It's so unreadable. There's literally a Fibonacci line on every tick. So whenever somebody says, oh, look, this Fibonacci called it, it's like, yeah, there's always a Fibonacci line that calls every tick. So what happened is we take these thousands of lines, or the software does. Of course, you can't really do this manually, but you take the thousands of lines, you run it through that algorithm, and then it spits out. Short version is, 6 or 7 levels above and below the market where there's super high concentrations or confluence areas of lots of Fibonacci support and resistance. And that's what our software does. And, in the beginning, you never know if it's going to work. So what I did, Ron, who was a day trader in Chicago, one of my early clients, I said, Ron, I need to test my software to make sure it works and make sure we're doing right. And he had a unique job at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange for the people he traded with. His job was to go around to all the big boys, the Deutsche Banks and Morgan Stanleys and all the big banks, and say, where do you guys need to do business today? And there's numbers where they know that if it gets to here, we got to do business, or we're going to buy these, or we're going to sell these.
The deck.
Yeah. So,
the guy standing in the pit, they had this thing called the deck, and where all their orders were. And they weren't supposed to let the guy standing next to them look at it. I worked on the New York Merc, so there was a lot of weird things going on in the pit back then. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
I went to New York with another client of ours. We went to the exchange and on the floor with him, and I saw all that. But short version is you're not supposed to show the book, but people kind of know.
Right.
His job is to kind of buddy up and say, well, where you guys got stuff to do. And anyway, short version is I said, I'm going to call you 30 minutes before the open every day for the next 6 months. And I'm going to tell you where they have business to do every day before the day begins. So I'd give them the list of 8 levels, 4 above, 4 below. I said, these are the areas where they're going to do business. He'd go do his thing. He'd call me before the open. He's like, John, you're within 50 cents on all of them. And we did this every day. He's like, software is incredible. He goes, just every day, it's the exact same levels at which these guys are doing business. And short version, I knew the software worked. And the really fun part about it is it does the exact same thing on every market, every time frame, every bar style. It doesn't matter what it is. Fibonacci is so dynamic that, because the market moves and that's what creates the Fibonacci levels, it auto corrects itself forever going into the future. So the software we run today is the exact same algorithm we had in 2003.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's showing you areas. It's not giving you, it's not saying buy here, sell here.
Right.
It's not automating trades, I would imagine.
We have an automated version, but we don't sell it. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
But we do have exact rules that we teach in our classroom. There's additional support indicators that go along with Fibonacci areas. You've got to have either a moving average type indicator, which we do. It's called our trigger lines. It's more of a smooth linear regression type moving average. We have divergences that are created with MACDs and swings that are automated on the chart. So what we end up with is two different scenarios. Our software, short version, Fibonacci, gives you levels at which the market may turn. And we have support indicators that will tell you, yes, it will, no, it won't. So short version is we want to do what every other day trader on the planet's doing. We want to have high momentum in our direction. We want to buy or sell a pullback. And then, the magic of what we do with our areas, we call them termination conditions and termination areas. And we can tell you with about a 90% degree of accuracy that this top's going to hold and that's it. Which, if you're a trend trader and you know that the market's not going to go anywhere, you don't take any more trades. So, there's two things. We teach when to get in, where to get in, why to get in, and then also, more importantly, when to stop trading so you can avoid.
So you're teaching this in a live room every day?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so you're teaching people how to use the software, how to interpret what the Fibonacci's and the areas of confluence mean. You have a couple of other indicators kind of layered in there to help you make decisions on when to get in and out.
Yeah, timing decisions.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and we've run a live chat room showing our software and doing it live in front of everybody. I don't know if it's 99 or 2000.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, we were one of the original.
People are in this business trying to teach trading,
and how many people have come and gone?
Yep, and they still come and they still go every single day.
They do
every single day.
Well, and, our success, I attribute it to a couple things, but customer service, number one, and then number two, we have something that works. And a lot of traders can't trade really well, and they're in that journey of trying to become a good trader. And I've never had anybody say, I failed because your software didn't work. Never had anybody tell me that, not one time. I would tell people I would guarantee your success if you would guarantee me you'd follow things properly and never mess it up.
So what's the biggest mistake you see the traders make?
This is interesting because the biggest mistake, number one mistake that every trader on the planet makes, I've seen it in the prop firms, I've seen it in everything we're doing, they trade over leveraged. That's the number one, I think, crime of most traders. I mean, there's so many crimes.
Give me an example of what that means to you.
There's a lot of crimes that day traders make. Trading live money before it's time and before, not having a trading plan. One of the, I kind of go on the assumption that somebody's going to build a trading plan, which is the wrong, because we preached it for 30 years. Trading plan rules, discipline. And
people are, we're not robots. We're emotional beings. And I would imagine, I know from my own experience, we see traders who just override their rules because their need to be right seems to override what the data that's right in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's the thing. If you run out of money, you're out of the game. And that's if you trade over leverage, you're going to run out of money quick. If you trade without a plan or without discipline, you'll run out of money slowly. And it's a very fine line between having rules that you're going to follow, the discipline to follow the rules, and consistency over the long term. Those are very hard, and the smarter you are, the harder trading is, I think. I've trained a lot of traders. I mean, 100,000 plus over the years, and pilots make the best day traders. Cold out of the blue, without question, 100% bet my life on it.
I can totally see that. That's a great point because they know how to follow a checklist.
Or people die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So we've had a lot of pilots over the years. Firemen, actually, believe it or not, are some of the better day traders out there.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a
Military?
huge contingent. Not as much.
Interesting.
And then it goes all the way down to probably, and I can say this because my father's an engineer, and he would never day trade. Engineers perhaps are some of the more challenging students, let's
Yes,
just
no
say.
question. Even so I teach day trading of stocks, but as you know, we sell
Yep, yep.
computers,
Sure.
and the engineer type for our doesn't work as our customer because we
Yeah.
try to pre-configure the machines, and these guys
Yes.
want to over-engineer it. They want to know about every little part, every little component that goes into the machine, and then they're shopping around. And I would imagine engineers with what you do, they want to put their own indicators in. They want to reverse engineer what you're doing. They ask a lot of questions and then they can't pull the trigger, is my guess.
Yeah, I mean that's a very good guess, a very educated guess, of course. And there's been a lot of them that have overcome that.
Okay.
But engineers need everything to be perfect,
Mm-hmm.
and day trading is a combination of odds and probabilities and the artistic ability to be able to feel what the market's doing at the moment. Because some days the
It's like a
market
kinetic. Yeah, and I think that kinetic
yeah.
thing builds over time, though. That's an experience thing from watching day in and day out.
It is. And, we tell people, look, it's going to take you a week to learn what we teach. It's going to take you 6 months to come off of paper trading and into some, maybe a prop firm or something small. And then it's going to take you a year to 2 years to really get good at trading and to be able to see enough repetitions that you believe in the odds. And it's interesting. In 2002, 2003, we spent a year. I spent a year, my wife did, working with Mark Douglas, who's, passed away unfortunately too early, but he still has such I think, a following and a lasting impression on the things that he teaches for the psychology of trading.
He's the guru,
And
the best known guru in the psychology of trading.
without a doubt, we used to call each other probably 4 times a week and
Wow.
discuss things. And, we kind of fought like cats and dogs a little bit because he said, most traders are going to fail and they're never going to be successful. And I said, that's such a dark thought. I said, how about you give them something that's so good that they do it over and over and over and they believe in it and then they're going to be successful? He goes, nope. He said, good people are going to buy your good software and they're going to screw it up. He goes,
It's just the
so
law
we
of
went
large
around
numbers right there.
yeah. And I'd like to think that we're a little above average, for the amount, if people would listen and do as we say, they're going to have a really good shot. Whether they trade crypto, crypto didn't exist when we wrote our software.
Right, of course.
And,
I watched the minis didn't exist. The micros didn't exist. There's probably the number of futures contracts you can trade is probably quadrupled. If I'm guessing.
Absolutely. And our software, I can put it on a I can put it on the Forex markets, I can put it on crypto, I can put it on stocks, I can put it on futures. And get the exact same results on every market, every time frame. And that's really why we've been successful for 25, 30 years.
What's your favorite market to trade? You personally?
NASDAQ.
Volatility? Yeah. NASDAQ 100.
I'm a gunslinger. NASDAQ futures, that's it.
Okay.
I literally don't look at any other
NASDAQ
charts.
100 futures, right? Okay.
Yes, sir. And, we teach on the S&P and crude oil. Okay. Because you can't teach a new trader on the NASDAQ. It's equivalent to playing a video game on 10. And I remember when my kids, who are now 30 and 31, when they were younger and they'd play video games with me, I'd go in there and I could see myself circling around in the video game and they'd just shoot me and kill me every 2 seconds.
Right.
And, and that's really what the new day trader is like. They're overwhelmed with a lot of stuff. So we try to simplify, take them down to level 1, and then work them up to the higher levels.
And that's a good point when it comes to trading, especially if you're newer to trading. There's information overload times 1,000, like, you know, to the 10th
Especially
power.
nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to another guy yesterday. You download TradingView or TradeStation. TradeStation has like 800 indicators built in. And then
it's crazy.
you have, you know, you put up 5 different time frames. You load the indicator. It's infinite the number of permutations that you can do with these indicators. So, and then you got the news blaring. You got CNBC or Fox Business, and then you're, you know, that cycle of those voices in your head, they influence you. I tell people to turn the news off.
Well, and you know what I've found, I mean, in the 90s, there was only a few of us. You know, there was 10 or 15 software vendors, and that was it. And, you know, some of them are still here, some of them aren't. And, you know, the thing that I find interesting is, and what I find most traders do, is they'll come in and they'll do a demo of our software. And they'll say, okay, your software's too expensive. We're going to go do some really cheap software that we found on the internet for $29. And, you know, I said, look, when you're down $10,000, just come back to me. And, you know, I think the biggest thing that we do is the support side of things. You know, live chat room. One of the things that we ask our clients, beg our clients to do and do it consistently is every time you take a trade, win, lose, or draw, preferably the losers, take a picture, post it in the chat room. So we want to see our clients losers because, look, if you did a perfect trade and it loses, no big deal. But you need to know that. As a new trader, how do you know if it's the right trade? How do you know if you were following the rules? You know, most people think they're following the rules, but when they post in that picture,
accountability.
We say, look, here's where you were wrong in your read, and here's where you could have done this, and here's where you shouldn't have done that. And it's that super down to the tick specificity of what they should or shouldn't be doing, that feedback that they get for posting those trades. That's why I think we've been very successful for a long time because, you know, we don't hide behind anything. We show you the software, we give you the rules, and we'll all do it together in the chat room.
So who's providing the feedback? Is it other traders or is it you or your team?
No. Well, in the beginning, it was me, you know, me and my wife, Melinda, you know, we were the only ones. And then, you know, our business started in 2003, our business doubled. And because people are like, okay, this is pretty cool software. 2004, it doubled again. And we're like, okay, maybe we should get an office. So we were home based. My father-in-law had retired from the food brokerage business and he ran a team of like 100 salespeople. And we said, hey, you should come work with us. So, which he still does 25 years later. So, he's still with us. And we said we need to open an office. So in 2005, we opened an office. We were up to about 35 people in the office. And every year, 2005, 6, 7, 8, we doubled. We were doing $5 million a year in software sales with 10 salespeople. Just everybody was killing it. And, you know, in 2008, the bottom fell. And which was fun. And we were like, okay, there's going to be a little downturn for a while. How bad could it be? And, you know, by 2010, it really was as, you know, that's when everything got flushed in 2009, 2010. And we said, look, we don't really need to pay 50 grand a month for an office. Everybody go work out of your house. And they did. Now, some of them were like, I want to move to Colorado and I want to move to wherever. So, you know, we were home based for 5 years. We had an office. And then we've been, since 2010, we've been home based ever since, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And that's how I got to Florida. You know, when our kids graduated high school, we said, hey, we want to go live on one of the better beaches on the planet. You know, Siesta Key in Florida, out of Sarasota, is one of the best. And our kids are like, what are we going to do? It's like, you can come with us or you can stay here in Texas, either way. So, you know, we actually moved out here 11 years ago. Love it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so where do you see the future of trading going? I know that you've expanded this incredible software and you've got some other offerings now. Can you tell us about that?
You know, I have to back up like 3 or 4 years. You know, we went to a lower cost lease on our software and had a lot of people. You know, the number of people that did software was exponentially higher. And this is really, I mean, Top Step prop firm was out there, but nobody really knew about the prop firm space. And most of our low cost lease, they start trading a lot of money, they lose 5 or 10 grand, they quit. And I said, there has to be a better way. And so I started looking around and I found all the prop firms. Apex, obviously the top dog out there, and, Take Profit Trader and Top Step, and, all the players in the business. And I said, this is what our clients are missing. I think if you read the review that I wrote on the Apex, it sums it up perfectly. I said, day traders do not need to trade their own money live when they're getting started, because they're going to do what I did in the beginning and blow 20 grand a couple times. And they're either going to quit or they're going to keep pumping money into it. And I said, the prop firm space allows somebody to have the same emotional, psychological issues that real money, a real account would have, but only risking $100 or, $50 or 250.
So wait. Let me ask you. So I've always told people paper trading is bullshit, because you don't develop those emotional juices you need with real money, because it's a totally different thing. So and so you feel that, if I read you right, if you sign up with an evaluation account of some sort, you at least start to develop you have some skin in the game to learn.
Skin in the game. Absolutely.
Okay.
And,
interesting.
And
that's an interesting perspective.
Yeah. And we've always taught paper trade while you're learning rules. Has nothing to do with making money or losing money. It's while you're learning where to get in, where to get out, how to fine tune your own personal plan. That's when you paper trade.
Okay.
Because then you can say, okay, but at some point you have to commit. And, when the minis came out, it was awesome because it was a lot smaller and cheaper. And then the micros came out, micro S&Ps or micro, you can trade for $1 a point. It's like, you're not going to lose any money. So we would basically have a 3-step plan for people. Is you would trade paper, trade minis. Once you make a couple grand, you could go up to a big contract. And then if you ever lost that couple grand, you got to go back down.
Okay.
And, it's a very methodical, slow approach to doing it, which nobody followed. Everybody wants to be a gazillionaire next week.
Yeah, exactly.
So, getting back to the prop firm stuff, I was like, this is genius. People can pay a little bit, blow out, $5,000 and ruin the whole thing and get, the big failure, and see the emotions. And, and we've sent millions of dollars of business probably to the other prop firms over the years from our software business. And at some point, everybody's like, when are you going to do one? And I was like, here, I've known the owners when Raymond and John Gramala started Ninja Trader back in 2004 or 5.
Now
we've been on
sold to Kraken.
Yeah, I know. Well, they haven't closed it yet, but I think
it's not a done deal. Okay.
Well, it's done, but it's not closed. Let's put it that way. Okay. So it should close. There's no reason it won't. I think it's going to be awesome. But short version is, if you've been on Ninja Trader and you've done prop firms and you've done even just Ninja Trader, it's buggy. And I write software for Ninja Trader. I know. I know it's fickle.
We get a lot of tech support calls for people.
Lots of tech.
They get hung up in Ninja. In fact, you've shared with me your bug. You have like a list of bug fixes, which my tech support team uses with people who are using Ninja. So I appreciate that, by the way.
And, the whole thing is Ninja's multi-threaded now. And, everybody had their software written for a single thread back in the day, TradeStation, Ninja Trader. And when they went to Ninja 8 and went multi-threading,
screwed all the other guys up.
Well, they have some bugs that are in there that we actually sent to them and said, look, this is a driver that's not working in .NET, and here's a fix. And our programmers really helped them out a lot. And they didn't ever implement some of the fixes. Anyway, I kind of got off point there, but when I was in the prop firm space and I said, okay, let's talk about doing a prop firm, what is it going to cost? What do you have to program? What do you have to do? And And I said, do I really want to do it with NinjaTrader? And I called Ninja and I said, what about doing the prop firm? And they're like, well, we're kind of in the middle of something that we're not going to allow a lot more prop firms in at the moment. This was their getting ready to buy Tradeovate and sell it to Kraken. Anyway, I said, okay, no big deal. I said, what are my other options for trading platforms out there? And I said, what's the most robust, stable, biggest platform out there? It's TradingView. I think everybody on the planet has a TradingView account, or if they don't, they will at some point. I think there's, 100 million plus users?
Wow.
So I said,
did
look.
not know that.
Yeah, over 100 million users. And from the free users to the paid users, I don't know how many free to paid, but 100 million users plus.
Wow.
It's what they say on their website, so I don't have any reason to doubt it. So I said, look, what I need to do is rewrite our software for TradingView. And so we wrote our software for TradingView.
Wow.
We gave it to all of our clients because we always told all of our clients, we'll give you an upgrade. If we do something different with the same software you paid for, you get it. So all of our clients get the TradingView upgrade free and they can do TradingView. And I said, if I'm going to do a prop firm, I'm going to do it at a non-Ninja place, short version. So AMP futures, AMP futures, one of the bigger ones out there and one of the top rated ones on TradingView. They've got 25,000 accounts, I think, on TradingView live, give or take.
They've been around for a long time.
Yeah. And I've known Dan Culp, the owner, since before he started AMP futures. So I called him and I said, hey, what about doing a prop firm through your thing instead of Ninja? And he's like, let's go, let's get it done. So we started that, a year ago, really is when we started it. And the programming involved, I have much respect for everybody who has done it. Let's put it that way. The amount of time, money, and programming that goes into it is a lot. I thought we could just whip it out pretty quickly. And, it's kind of like when we wrote our software. It's only going to take 3 or 4 months and took 2 years. Yeah.
It's like building a house with contractors.
Yeah. Yeah. So, building a house in Florida takes 5 times longer than building a house in Texas. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. Anyway, I digress. Anyway, I have a lot of respect for everybody in that business. And I know how much money we've given to the other prop firms. And I said, there's just no reason to do that. We're going to do our own. And so we have spent the last year putting together our prop firm.
Beautiful. And it's called?
It's called NextGen ProTrader Funding. So we keep it in the NextGen family. NextGen ProTraderFunding.com.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah. And, right now we're just launched this month. So we're doing 80% off of everything. Like,
beautiful.
Apex has it right. The sales that they do and the way they run things, so I never have anything bad to say about anybody else. I personally would like to use the term different. And
what makes you different? What makes yours different than Apex? Better than, I'm going to say better, or better than any of the other prop firms out there?
Yeah, we can say different. I mean, the clients can say better or worse. That's up to the traders to decide whether they like it better or worse. But
what makes you different?
The first thing is I hate the intra-equity drawdown. I've done so many Apex accounts and blown them out that I'm embarrassed. Anyway, we'll leave it at that, okay? And that trailing drawdown is a killer.
Explain how that works to somebody who has never done prop firm trading before, trader funding.
Yeah, well, there's 2 ways. And, their drawdown is from, if you go in a trade and you're up $2,000 and you only close out 1,000, you're basically down $1,000 in your drawdown. So if you have a $3,000 drawdown, you're down 1,000 already, even though you won $1,000. And other firms did it where they would only say, look, if you made 1,000, you're up 1,000. There's no down. So there's no intra high equity drawdown.
So you're always, so you're saying at Apex, your drawdown is always from your peak level.
Open equity.
And what about, and you guys, how do you guys do it?
Well, and, I have to say, if you're not trading over leveraged at Apex, that's a good way to do it. If you're trading a 1 lot instead of a 10 lot, you can get away with that type of drawdown. But I think, when we set out to do our business, I said, I want it to be almost as if it's really their $50,000 or $100,000. And I want it to be so realistic and lifelike as it would be in the real world. So if you make or lose money, that's your drawdown. or your gain. There's no intra-high peaks and sneaky ways to do it. And the other thing is we gave everybody a little bigger drawdown, a little bigger daily loss.
So where is the cutoff point? It's from one day to the next day?
Yeah, well, So, I mean, as you're trading during the day, if you go up $4,000 and then lose $4,000, your day is going to be over. You'll failure. But if you're just making money and you're only giving back a little bit and then making money, just like every other firm out there, I think the footprint's pretty much the same. You pass that evaluation, you get pushed up into what we call a semi-live account. All of our programmers, it's a live account that they can get paid for, but it's still sim. And that's, this is really the turning point, I think, in most prop firms is watching the traders. And this is where myself, my brother, my father-in-law, my wife, everybody who's been involved in, my kids now even who've been involved in our business forever, we've spent 30 years, 25 years analyzing people's trades and telling them what they did right, what they did wrong. Are they a good trader, bad trader, reckless trader? So I think a lot of the magic happens when people pass. You have to decide whether you're going to copy their trades or not. And that's how all prop firms, hedge themselves against good traders as they copy their trades so there's money to actually pay them. And, before they decide to move up into a real account, which is always a possibility, just not highly probable for most people. Most people are fine as long as they get paid. And that's the most important thing is that there's money to pay people when they win. And, we do a lot of analysis of people's trades. We're watching what they do live. We expect them to trade like a real trader. Like we've trained people, the things that we've trained people to do over the last 25 years, we expect our traders to do that. And if you're not consistent, you're going to be out, or you're going to have to rebuy an account like everybody else. But we gave everybody fair drawdowns. There's some other firms out there that give you that really nice drawdown. And when you go live, they give you the open equity trailing drawdown, which is very bait and switch, sneaky.
Right.
So, we're trying to be super transparent about everything we do, how we do it, and we want to make it as realistic as possible. For example,
if somebody does an evaluation account, does that include your software? That's totally separate thing.
Well, we've given our software for 30 days to everybody who wants to do one. And it depends. Most people that come to us have a plan already. They don't want to be told what to do or be taught what to do. And I think this is going to set us apart too. When somebody fails 20 accounts or 30 accounts, we can say, look, here's our method. We've taught it for 25 years. You can have free access to the software for a month or two. And you can join our live class every day, which is open to everybody. Join our live class, learn how to make money, and then you can come back and do more prop accounts or evaluation accounts. So we'll be here to make people successful if they choose to go down that route. They don't have to.
Right. Okay.
Most people have their own way of doing things, and it's not our way. So we have a very niche way of trading the market. But, it's there. It's available to them if they want it. So
okay, so you feel that your funding, your NextGen ProTrader funding, you give people a little more leeway. The rules are not quite as strict as the other funding companies, and
absolutely.
But are a lot of so you're finding a lot of them are coming from, and they have their own way, their own methodology they're using.
We've just launched this month, so we did kind of a soft launch into our NextGen clients. So everybody who's in now, up to this point, now going forward, we're going out to the public, but we've done a soft launch over the last 3 or 4 weeks where it's just our guys and they know us, because look, there's going to be some bugs and some things as you're,
of course,
you're getting going. So we've worked through all those issues, hopefully all those issues. It's software. There's always something to do. It never ends.
Always, never ends.
So yeah, it never ends. But, you can always get better at what you're doing, but now it's stable. Trading View's awesome. Our indicators in it are awesome. AMP brokerage has been awesome. It's just a really easy, seamless process to get started. Whereas, we've sold NinjaTrader software since NinjaTrader began. And it's a very difficult, just going back to the NextGen software sales side, it's a very difficult sale compared to a TradingView demo, because you've got to have a good PC, which,
right.
in being in the PC space, I've got 4 supercomputers in my office. If needed, I could run SpaceX from here. And this is where a new trader comes in, and they're like, and we tell them, look, to do our software before we did it for TradingView, you have to have a good PC. And they're like, well, what's good? I said, look, if you spend at least 1,500 or more, it's going to be sufficient. So now, if you don't have a PC, you couldn't do NextGen software. So Mac people, you're out. Bad, no computer, you're out. So there was and then you have to load NinjaTrader, and then NinjaTrader crashes. And it's, why did NinjaTrader crash? And so let's just say there's a lot of barriers to selling software for NinjaTrader that we have not experienced with TradingView.
Now, are you recommending people use the downloadable app on their computer on TradingView?
I always tell everybody, use the downloaded version. If you don't, it's okay in a browser, but I like, personally, myself, the desktop version of TradingView.
Yeah, I think there's a limitation in these browser-based platforms in terms of the way it uses the memory, the way it interacts with Chrome or whatever browser software you're using. You're going to get the full resources of your desktop computer or your laptop if you download it there, for sure.
And the other nice thing is you can take your iPad, go out by the pool, and you've got your charts up and running.
Right.
So you
keep an eye on what's going on.
You're not chained to the desk.
Right.
And I think that's one of the big, things that new day traders don't particularly care for. They don't want to sit at their desk for 5 hours, waiting for a good setup, which causes them to trade early and often, and sometimes the wrong trade, because they're ready to make money and get it over with, as opposed to waiting for that.
Over trading.
Absolutely. So, so I'm excited to be in the space.
It's awesome.
It's been a lot of work. I think it's going to be very fruitful work.
Do you have any special promotions for my peeps?
We're doing 80% off of all evaluations.
Awesome.
So if we'll have the code is launch 80.
Okay.
So, and we can, but we're going to continue to do specials throughout the first few months as we get up and running and get out there. And, the big thing is feedback from the traders. Are they happy with the drawdowns? Are they happy with the way things are done? Are they happy? One of the things that we do when you pass an evaluation account, we put them through the compliance ringer, and AMP futures, we actually use their compliance. So they've got to have an ID. They've got to have, driver's license or passport, or they need to have proof of residency. They're going to have.
Is there a limitation in terms of country they can be from? I know, know your client.
Yes.
Obviously, there's the banned countries, but is AMP in general fairly open to the world? Like TradeStation is like...
Okay. I mean, they're not, the traditional...
Can people from Canada do it?
Absolutely. Canada, we've got Canadians, we've got Australians, we've got... the people, we've got actually a pretty high percentage of people passing all of our evaluations, and it makes you wonder, did you make it too easy for people? But
it's your people, guys so you train them.
Yeah. So they know how to trade, and, and they still make, you can watch them trade, and they still make mistakes, and every trader makes mistakes. It's the recovery from a mistake that sets a trader apart.
Right.
So,
exactly.
I had somebody tell me the other day, they were talking to a pro golfer, and he goes, look, I'm going to make 6 bad shots every round, period. He goes, there's just going to be 6, shank it over here, put it over there. He goes, every round I expect 6 bad ones, but I expect the good ones to outweigh the bad ones. And I think the same is true in day trading. You're going to have a couple where you're like, oh, why did I do that? But it's how you recover and the things you do consistently over time that, and
how
really
fast you acknowledge that you're wrong.
That's a hard thing to do.
I mean, think about how many times Babe Ruth struck out.
A lot more times than he hit home runs.
Yeah, that's right. And I think his lifetime batting average was like 330 or 340, so a very high number. for an not
for
so
baseball.
not so in shape guy. Yeah. Well, it means 65% of the time he didn't get
failed.
a hit. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah. So,
and you can do the same in trading, but it's more difficult to do at a lower percentage because you have to truly allow those winners to run. And if you tell a new trader, look, buy low, sell high, good wisdom. Well, what the hell is low? What's high? How am I supposed? So, and this is where our software does a really good job. This is exactly low. And if it goes past this line by more than a couple points, you're out, you lose a little bit. And this is where, the more important thing is when we get into a trade, we already know where it should go and why it should go there. And we can put our profit targets in immediately at the next Fibonacci levels and where it's supposed to hold. And then if conditions change along the way, you got to manage your trade, of course. But if the conditions don't change, all you have to do is just sit back and keep your hands in your lap and wait to get paid. And that's the beautiful thing about it, because you can see the levels. I know I'm buying the blue line because everything's going up, and I'm going to get out at the red line.
So if people want to learn about your software, they go to
NextGenT3.com.
NextGenT3.com. And then if they want to check out your funding platform, it's NextGen ProTrader funding.com.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah. And both websites link back and forth to each other. And so it's in the NextGen family. And we're really excited to get into the prop firm space. It's a little scary, truth be told, and a little exciting. And we feel very confident that we're going to be very, very competitive with everybody out there.
Not going to take bring that level of customer service that you have over on the software side.
I have all customer service people.
That is
all the people. I've got 8 people on day one, and I know I'm going to need a lot more as we start to grow. But not more than a minute goes by where people don't get live help. Plus, we've got the Discord, so they ask for help in the Discord. We've got a tech support room in our Discord.
Beautiful.
We've got a live chat, and we've got the ticketing system. If something's too urgent, you can put a ticket in.
Customer service is everything. I mean, that's what I've learned on my end. That's a thing of the past these days. What business can you call and get somebody on the phone anymore?
It's tough.
Or not a bot in chat, like it can't, it just doesn't happen anymore. So the fact that you have live people and who are really going to help you when you get hosed up, and that's, you need that.
And we're going to need more people. I know that. So I've got 10 people that are waiting to be hired.
Wow.
And a lot of the people who want to be hired actually are our clients. They're like, look, I'm retired. I want to work for 6 hours a day, and I'll help you out. And just let me know when you want to do it. And so, we've got a really deep pool of,
traders,
100,000 people to pull from. Yeah, traders to pull from.
Yeah, that's the best. They're not just, kids out of college who have no clue about the market. They're real traders with some experience.
Because a lot of our support has been get on somebody's computer and actually show them how to do stuff on trading, or show them how to place a trade. And on TradingView. These are all NinjaTrader users that are transitioning. So, existing TradingView users know what they're doing. TradingView is very, very simple. NinjaTrader is not quite as, I think NinjaTrader is still the best day trading program out there as far as the visual and putting things on the chart. But the more I use TradingView, I like it equally.
Yeah. Ninja to me, looks like a dinosaur compared to TradingView. It's just not visually appealing. That's one man's point of view. Last question for you. What trading advice would you give to your younger self?
Slow down. That's really, over the years, I've seen people jump into it with both feet and all their money, and they've made, I've watched a guy lose $4 million.
Wow.
And I'm like, stop, just stop. And he's like, no. Well, he was going short the market and holding overnight positions going, it's got to go down eventually. And anyway, he was out $4 million. He had plenty of money.
And what time period?
But 4 months, 3 months.
God.
He kept holding for months and going short and going short and going short and going short. And, The market kept going up and up and up.
And he wasn't
like, just go
trading.
long.
He was just
No,
adding
just
to his
holding the
margin
position.
call.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
And
God.
$4 million for him was a drop in his bucket. So
yeah, but
it's like us losing, like normal people losing $4,000. So anyway, I guess it's all relative. But
right.
the thing I would say is slow down. You don't have to be rich this week or next week. Take your time to really learn what you're doing, learn what could go wrong, and you don't know what's going to go wrong until you do it sometimes. You can plan for something going wrong, but until it actually happens and you feel the heat coming on the top of your head because you're mad at yourself for whatever you've done, that's the hardest part, is the controlling of the emotions.
Oh my God. Yes,
trading's easy. You click up, that's how you trade. That's what is
like
involved.
A video
it's
game.
really, really easy. Yeah. So it's really easy to trade. It's not as easy to control the emotions in there, for sure.
It's I know my experience with trading, 38 years, is what's going. I mean, you get a couple bad trades in a row, and all your head trash just stirs into the top. And for me, my biggest problem is revenge trading. I'm going to get it back. And then you wind up over trading. You make it worse. And then
trading over leverage, doubling down.
Yep.
Going over leverage. Well, one of the things we tell all of our prop firm people is, look, trades. I had a guy today. He's like, he's blown out like 10 accounts. And he's trading a 6 lot on crude oil on a $100,000 account. I said, trade a 1 lot. I said, you'll never blow out, because you can make money. He's very good at trading, but I said, it's the leverage that's making you fail. And now he's taking it down to 1 contract, and so far he's doing good. So fingers crossed.
The full size crude, not the mini crude.
Yeah, just full size.
Right.
Yeah, it's fun. This is a fun business. I love dealing with people. We love helping people make money. And I think that's really the most important thing, is that we want to provide tools that work and fit into a trader's plan and really help them make money.
Awesome, John. I really appreciate you taking the time today. You have an amazing story. I've spoken to quite a few people who don't have the career that you have, and I just know from my own experience, you're the real deal, and that's a really hard thing to find out there. If you're learning how to trade online, you're watching this interview on YouTube right now, most of what you're seeing online, the guys with the Lamborghini in the background, you may know who I'm talking about, fly-by-night cats. You want to learn from guys and gals, but guys mostly, who have been in this business for a long time. And John, that's all he knows. He knows trading. He's been around for a while. He developed his own software, and he really helps people make money. John, thanks so much for your time today. Awesome.
I appreciate it. I appreciate spending time with you.